Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. It's going to be my patch 9.2, hopefully brief, Sepulcher the First One's raid review video. Now, in it, we're going to talk a bit about really every boss and just what spec I imagine is going to probably be the best on that fight in a week 1 and week 2 progression-based kind of setting. Now, we know that Destro gains a lot of ground getting its 4-piece, Demo gains some ground getting its 2-piece, and Af doesn't gain a whole lot of ground really getting any piece. Memes aside, I want to talk about what specs are going to be good on the fight in early prog. Later on, things might change a bit. If they do, I'll probably make a video covering that, but week 1, week 2 going into the raid, got a lot of questions about it, so I want to try and address those in this video. Now, if you guys see any weak auras, profiles, or add-ons you would like to acquire from this video, they are all indeed available to you guys free on my Twitch. If you want to swing by, hang out, grab them, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. And I also want to give one huge shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys a million times for all support. Really appreciate it. If you're interested in supporting, there should be a link somewhere up here, as well as down in the video description below. Oh, and I forgot to mention briefly that Lords of Dread, Rygalon, and the Jailer have not been tested on PTR to any extent. They are indeed in the Dungeon Journal, but they have not been tested, so I've opted to omit them from this video. Now, I probably will make a video talking about them the week the actual fights are open, and we've seen a bit of them, looking at what specs could be good on the fight. But TLDR, this is going to be the first 8 bosses for week 1 and, week 2, depending on your prog, heading into the raid. Now, let's get into the video. Vigilant Guardian is the first boss you will encounter in Sepulcher, and it's a mix of single target at times with heavy AoE at other times, and priority-based ag cleave. Now on Mythic, the boss is present from the actual start, being the large Vigilant Guardian mob you see here, and you'll also have the trash packs coming in, small ads, medium ads, large ads, and you'll have those priority-based ads you want to cleave and burn down at times as well. Now I played Destro in our Mythic testing, but keep in mind, this is with Destro's 4-piece tier bonus, Reign of Chaos procs, Blasphemy Infernals, and things like that. When it comes to early progression in Heroic and Normal, I do think that Demonology probably is the best bet here, just due to its minute Tyrant cooldown, strong stat cleave, whether you're playing FTS Dreadlash build or more of a single target build of Demonology, it just has a solid damage profile for this fight. And with this being the first boss in the raid, you probably can play whatever you want and get away with it. Now, Destro wouldn't be terrible, and to a similar extent, I don't think Af would be horrendous either, maybe with a Sow the Seeds kind of build, or a build playing Wrath of Consumption. Either way, I don't see Vigilant Guardian being that tough of a boss, seeing as how it is the first boss heading into the actual raid. Artificer Xymox will be the second boss you most likely encounter in Sepulcher, and sort of how a good portion of these middle bosses are, this is predominantly a single target based boss in phase 1. Now when he pushes into phase 2, there is a wave of ads that spawn, some being a bit more priority over others that cast random frontals and need to be interrupted, or effects you just want to kick in general. But for the most part, we just had a DK actually grip them, AoE them, and pretty much move on. Once they die, you're back into phase 1, and it's more or less rinse and repeat with just more mechanics coming in. More circles to dodge, more traps, a couple nasty overlaps with tank grips and rings coming at you, but I just pretty much played Demonology for all of our testing on this fight, and it seemed to be the best option. Once again, stacked AoE, Implosion Cleave, Demonic Strength, FTS Dreadlash Cleave if need be. I wouldn't fault somebody for playing Destruction here if they wanted it with heavy Reign of Chaos damage, but Destro without its 4-piece, and until you get the 4-piece, is pretty lackluster when it comes to single target, even worse than Affliction, and I don't really think even the 2-minute version of Destro will be optimal here. My bet is this is probably just a solid Demonology fight, pretty much just through and through. Now the next boss you're going to encounter is most likely Skolex, the insatiable Ravener, Ravager, something. He's a big worm. He is a single target based boss with some movement. So at times as range, you'll have to move out from his large Wretch frontal based ability, but outside of that, unless you're assigned to one of the soak groups where you manage the debuff he puts out by standing in the back of the raid, you pretty much just plant and attack the boss. Now there's also a mechanic where you have to stack the entire raid up, where he essentially interrupts whatever cast he's doing and will submerge and knock the raid up, thus clearing the actual debuffs on the players that are split evenly amongst the raid. But besides that, as range, you mostly just dodge the Wretch frontal you see there, dodge the blue swirlies if need be, and just kill the boss. Now as far as specs are concerned here, the only real option I feel we have if you're trying to min-max in a progression-based setting is going to be Demonology. It's our de facto go-to best single-target spec. This is a single-target fight. If you're playing Demonology, you have frequent Demonic Core procs, Demonic Calling procs, a lot of things you can cast on the move, whether it's planned movement, unplanned movement, pre-planned movement. Demo just feels good on Skolex. Good single-target damage, good toolkit for the fight. Overall, just, I'd say, if you're trying to min-max, the best choice for this fight in a progression-based setting. Now, Halondrus is a very interesting boss, because the last time we tested Halondrus during Mythic testing on PTR, which this is not, by the way, this is normal testing, the pylons you will see rotating around the room have been removed completely from the fight, which makes this go from being a very good Destruction Warlock fight to probably not a good Warlock fight in general. And that's partially due to the pylons being removed, and also partially due to just the boss itself I don't think being very range friendly. When he hits 80% and I believe 60 or 50, he just gets up and walks away. And if you're melee, you can just chase him around and hit him. If you're range, you just chase him around and watch the melee hit him. I don't really think this fight sort of reminds me of Soul Render Dormzane a bit when it came to Mythic SOD testing, where not really any Warlock specs felt great on it. And then obviously we had this other Seeds build emerge later on with Decaying Soul Satchel. But this fight just might end up being a demo fight by default because it's just a good spec. You can just play it and do some damage. It might also end up being a decent Affliction fight just because you can maintain dots on the move, refresh on the move, and just sort of go from there. Now you're going to need one Warlock in your raid regardless. Summons, Hellstones, Soulstones, Battle Reses, whatever, all the kind of Warlock utility that you bring. And Gateway here is pretty decent if you're falling behind to catch up and or traverse, large portions of the actual, terrain of this boss quickly. So I'm sort of just giving the nod to Demo here with the potential of it being a okay AF fight. It's really up in the air. This fight changed a lot since raid testing, and they'd never tested it again. So I'm curious to see where this fight actually lands in a progression kind of setting, in a world first setting, heroic, mythic. I think Demo, but I also think that Affliction could be an option because, hey, your dots will do some damage while the boss is moving around. But without the pylons being around anymore, I don't think this is a very good Destro fight anymore. Now, the next fight you'll most likely encounter is Dausegne, or the Sausage, as it's also known here, which is also predominantly a single target fight. There will be these Domination Core adds that spawn every once in a while, which do need to be killed and sort of cleaved down, but during Mythic testing, which they pretty much just died really quickly to just raid cleave. There wasn't really any reason to play Destro here because they didn't spawn frequently enough, I should say, to really warrant that Havoc-based profile. And even as Demo, you can just sort of implode them if need be, and they just sort of fall over. Now, outside of that, there was a lot of semi-frequent raid damage coming in, which was dealt via the actual split so here in the beam, or just her shield-based ability that she will do every once in a while, which requires the raid to actually break the shield, and until you do, she pulses actual damage on the raid. And outside of that, for the most part, the fight is just dodge ground-based effects. She will cast a Domination Halo every once in a while, which has to have... You have to cross the Halo and then wait for your debuff to expire to cross subsequent halos if need be. Now, she'll initially cast 1, and then later on in the fight 2, and then 3, and then 4, depending on how many actual pillars she channels into. Now, as a Warlock, thankfully, you have Demonic Circle, which you can just skip over an entire beam, or 2 if you're lucky, without getting any kind of debuff. So, hey, Warlock life, simple, easy, good to go. As far as this fight's concerned, I think it's just a pretty much tried and true Demonology fight. Once again, the only real potential relevance for like Destro or AF would maybe be like Ad Cleave, but Demo just does better single target, and you can really implode them if need be to get about the same damage on the actual Domination Core. So just like the other few bosses, I'd say this is a solid Demonology fight. Prototype Pantheon is the next boss you will encounter, and this is the Affliction and Destro Dream boss. Now, I did play Affliction for all of our heroic testing, mythic testing, and normal testing here. I did feel that Affliction was a little better than Destruction when Destro had its old tier set, which wasn't guaranteed Infernals, no Reign of Chaos procs, and things like that. You can play Inevitable Demise in this fight over Drain Soul and get multiple 2-target, 3-target, 4-target, even 5-target max Inevitable Demise Soul Rot extension based drain lives off on this fight, which makes it very, very powerful, on top of the fact that it's a permanent 2-target in the final phase, 4-target fight, which Affliction is just great at. Now, the version of Destro that has the 4-piece tier bonus and things could also be very good on this fight in the final phase. Stack 4 targets, big random fire cleave, big havoc cleave, and all of that. But in an early progression-based setting, I do think that Affliction will most likely bring more to this fight, whether you're playing ID or not. Whether you have tier or not. I think Af's profile is just built very well for having this spread kind of damage profile. Even in the final phase, when we have 1 legendary, playing Decaying Soul Satchel on 4 targets, when we only have 1, will still give you an incredible crit and haste damage amp with Lust, Power Infusion, other based effects in the final phase, when you want to kill them all at the same time. Pantheon is a great fight for Destro and Af. It feels like almost Coven of Shavara did back in the day in Legion. That good of a Warlock-based fight. If you enjoy Affliction, hey, this is going to be your fight, and probably quite possibly almost your only fight of the tier. Now, if you really have if you're set on playing Demonology here, I will say for the most part, these bosses are stacked, so you can get a decent bit of Demonology cleave, but Af just felt better. I do think Af brings a better toolkit to this fight, and probably is going to be the best option heading into week 1 and week 2 early prog. Now, Lihuvim will be the 7th boss you encounter in the raid, and very similar to other bosses, it is a single target-esque based fight, but there's a bit more ad cleave, I'd say, in the intermission in this fight than comparatively to, I guess, other fights where you play Demonology. Now, the actual ad cleave in phase 2 is sort of dependent on what ads you kill quickly, because whichever ones you don't, they will spawn and have to be killed when the boss is active, either if you make it back into phase 1, or if you have a bit of time left in actual phase 2. But either way, the single target damage profile that Demonology brings to this fight, I think, is just too strong to honestly just ignore on the priority ads, on Lihuvim himself. Now, there were a few polls we played Destruction on, and I think Destro's Havoc Cleave could be okay on this fight, but I actually struggle trying to find relevancy and ways to get that Havoc Cleave, because you can't really cleave 2 targets in phase 2 when you have the ads and their cubbies. You don't have enough time to really set up with Havoc because they're so far apart. Now, if you do end up pulling multiple ads back to the boss, going back from phase 2 into phase 1, you can get good cleave there. Whether it's Destro-based cleave with like Havoc and Cataclysm and maybe even Rain of Fire on the large ads, or just Demonology stacked Implosion, Demonic Strength, Dreadlash-based cleave, the possibility is there. But when that's dead, once again, what brings a better single target damage profile? The answer is Demonology. So I do feel this is going to be a better Demonology fight than it is a Destro fight and an Affliction fight. The nod, once again, to Demonology. And finally, we have Anduin. This is going to be the final boss, week 1 of the raid opening up, being heroic, because Dreadlords, Rygalon, and the Jailer are not actually available until Mythic, and Anduin is a wild ride. This feels like a final raid boss in the middle of a raid. So I think both Destruction and Demonology both have relevancy on this fight. I tested Mythic Anduin as Destro with the 4-piece tier set, and also played Demo 4-piece for what it's worth here. There are certain points in this fight, like phase 1, where you want that strong single target profile that Demonology can bring. Now, if you're assigned to the group that goes downstairs to kill the ads, cleave them down, which gives Anduin more energy, Destruction felt like a pretty solid option. I was able to bank a 4-piece proc, go down with my actual Infernal, launch my player Infernal, launch my 4-piece proc, and get that strong Destro-based cleave that I really wanted. Demonology felt okay. I really didn't have Tyrant down here. I could probably pop it, but for the most part, I wasn't able to get great value out of it. Demonology's strength lied more so, I felt like, in early phase 1 Anduin damage, and phase 2 when the Lich King spawns. Now, they've changed this fight. Previously, you would do multiple cycles until Anduin reached 100 energy, I think 110 energy maybe. Either way, downstairs killing the ads, healing the ads, and when he reached full energy, he would push into phase 2, the actual Lich King would spawn, and the Lich King, the damage you dealt to him, Anduin would take 150% of that damage. However, they've changed it, and I believe now Anduin's on a timer for whenever he phases, and he buffs the raid with a damage increase, I believe up to 200%, based on the amount of energy that he pushes with going into the Lich King phase. Now, the damage you deal to the Lich King 100% of that is reflected back onto Anduin. So that huge demonology single target tyrant base profile with that damage amp is very, very, very strong. At the same time, if you're able to set up a tyrant early on Anduin and pop it right when the Lich King spawns, you're able to essentially fit in 2 tyrants into the actual Lich King burn window. Now, demonology also has a cleave damage with implosion, Hand of Gul'dan splash damage, which can be good at killing ghouls, but for the most part, in a prog-based setting, you're probably not imploding here. You're just actually trying to do as much damage as possible to the Lich King. So, Destro can bring good cleave too. Not as good single target, but it really depends where you want to allocate damage here. I think that I'm probably going to end up just playing Demo in this fight, but I could very well see a world where Destro does end up getting the nod here, just due to how strong his cleave profile and like relevant spread cleave damage can be in prog-based settings. And yeah, that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this video answered some of the questions you might have had about what specs are looking good on certain bosses heading into week 1, week 2, and just, I guess, the first few weeks of Sepulcher. Now, it's very important to keep in mind, Blizzard typically does heroic week tuning, which means this guide, these specs, and things could change, and a handful of these bosses haven't even been tested in their altered form, like Halondrus and Anduin and Lihuvim. So things are subject to change. But that being said, this is what I feel. So we're going to be the best spec, or I guess specs, in each fight going forward. Hopefully you guys like demonology. If not, hey, maybe there's an AF fight or a Destro fight. Once again, any weak auras, profiles, or add-ons you guys saw here, all indeed available to you guys from my Twitch. Want to grab them, swing by, hang out, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. If you have any questions in general that I missed or any comments, feel free to drop them down below in the comment section. I will be sure to get back to you. And once again, I want to give one massive shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys a million times for all support. If you're interested in supporting, there should be a link somewhere up here, as well as down in the video description below. With all that being said, thanks again for watching, dudes, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream in Sepulcher. Peace.